Good afternoon, everyone. Joshua Severe Weather, and happy Thursday to you. Thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. We are tracking newly upgraded Tropical Storm Sara, which is approaching the coast of northeastern Honduras. Now, the track on this system has changed significantly over the last couple of days. A lot of our model guidance showed it early in the week becoming a major threat to the Yucatan, to western Cuba, and to Florida as a stronger storm. Well, that idea has gone by the wayside, thank goodness, but unfortunately at the expense of those in Central America, including Belize, Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, Nicaragua, and the Yucatan. But a weaker storm expected now because of the fact that the storm has been a little bit faster and it is now basically being touched by the coast of Honduras. And that is going to limit how strong it gets and lead to weakening as it moves across the Yucatan and into the southern Gulf of Mexico. So some good news, but we are certainly not off the hook on this. We're going to track it until it dies. And hopefully that is sooner than later. But here's my updated track. You'll notice I'm no longer expecting this to become a hurricane, although it may get close when it is approaching the Belize coast early next week. But nonetheless, this storm is slow moving. It is going to impact millions. It's a large storm. We are going to see some catastrophic flooding this week across portions of Honduras, as well as parts of El Salvador, Guatemala, Belize, and the Yucatan Peninsula, Quintana Roo in particular. And kind of two possible scenarios here as the storm moves across the Yucatan. Yes, it will weaken, and how strong it is when it comes in, how much it can avoid the coast and maintain some intensity into this weekend will impact if it survives that trek across the Yucatan into the Gulf of Mexico. Right now, I have played it down to a tropical storm and then a post-tropical low affecting the Florida coast by the middle of next week. Regardless, if you're in Florida, if this is a tropical storm or a post-tropical system or even merging with a front, you do have the risk for some gusty winds, heavy rain, and maybe even some severe weather. So that's something to keep in mind. But we are not looking at another hurricane strike at this point. So I am very happy to say that. Obviously, it makes my forecast from a few days ago look like trash, but you know what? I'm probably not the only one here. So regardless, let's talk about the future of Sara. And you can see it's a very large system, a very large amount of outflow encompassing much of Central America and the Western Caribbean. Now, the center is right about here, approaching the coast here. It's going to be heading in this direction, very close to the coastline. It is getting some dry air that is affecting it into this part of the storm. That is keeping it from strengthening rapidly. It's also a large system, so it is disorganized, and we don't really have a well-defined core just yet. We have a system that's beginning to organize. So if this were over here instead of over here, we would have a hurricane for sure. Where the waters are warmer and where there's no land effects, we would definitely have that. But because the system moved quicker than models expected, we have seen that idea go away. Nonetheless, pretty good banding features, lots of rain coming. You can see here some tall thunderstorm clouds in here, tall thunderstorm clouds in here, and all of this is going to be producing quite a bit of rain across this region here on the order of over 20 inches of rain, maybe 25 to 30 inches of rain over the next 6 to 7 days. This is the infrared satellite, and you can see Jamaica over here getting some showers over the Westmoreland province. We're getting some heavy rain here across Grand Cayman. We are starting to see some rain moving into Belize over here. Right now, the heaviest rain rates are just scraping the coast of Honduras and mostly avoiding Nicaragua for the time being. Now, as the system moves west, it will be and it's going to be a slow process. We are going to see continued amounts of heavy rain. Now, we had a couple of aircraft fly through the storm here today. The pressure has dropped a little bit. It's just below 1,000 millibars, so it is now a tropical storm. The first flight in did not really pick up tropical storm force wind. It had a little bit of wind here, close to 40 miles per hour on the southeastern side. There was another flight that came in right after, and you will see that one did pick up some tropical storm force winds on the southeast side, but barely. So the system right now is moving parallel to the coast of Honduras right here. And as of last report, that motion, generally speaking, is in here. And our models in the future all agree that it's going to be very close to the coast, but we have some that slow the storm down and drift it just inland, while we have others that keep it just north of the coast. And the next, say, 48 to 72 hours are going to be critical with how the coast comes into play here. If the storm center is able to stay organized here and able to scrape the coast and remain up in here, then this does still have a chance of becoming a hurricane. And the stronger it gets when it hits Belize, the more likely it's going to survive into the Gulf of Mexico. But the official hurricane forecast from the National Hurricane Center, which I'll show you in a little bit, does bring this just inland, and then eventually it comes back out, but much weaker. And as a result, the Hurricane Center no longer expects this to be a direct hit on Florida as a tropical system. It just has a remnant low. We've got another plane that is left, Keesler Air Force Base in Biloxi. That'll get in here this evening, so we'll have more updates to see if that pressure is dropping anymore. So yeah, we're in a critical phase here of the storm's future. And if it doesn't get its act together too quickly, then that's obviously going to be the best news that we can have. But if it is starting to get more organized tonight, and this plane will get in there to see that, then this forecast could have to be adjusted upward again. Here's a look at the European ensemble. This is the probability of a tropical depression or greater. And you can see the chances aren't super high, but right now favoring the Florida Panhandle and the Big Bend area and just north of Tampa. This is a shift from a few days ago where the higher chances were farther down the coast of Florida. That is the tropical depression chance. The tropical storm probability, as you would imagine, is lower. You can see it's pretty high right up to Belize and then quite a bit lower over the central Gulf. But there is a secondary area that right now is keying in on the Panhandle coastline, Panama City in particular, and the time frame on that would be sometime Tuesday night into Wednesday morning. After that, obviously, our chances are going to go on the wayside. There's some possibility this gets stuck down in here, but I don't know if I believe that just yet. And then the hurricane probabilities, there were some yesterday. Today, we have nothing. So if you go back one model run to the 0Z here, you'll see there was a very slim chance of hurricane potential here over the Northwest Caribbean, but nothing in the Gulf. A couple of days ago, or at least in yesterday's run. So you can see here the trend continues to be weaker and weaker, which is great news. Here is a look, and I'll update this here. Here's a look at our latest forecast track from the National Hurricane Center. And you can see the winds right now are about 40 miles per hour. They're expecting it to get to 50 and basically touch the coastline here early in the day tomorrow and then continue very close to the coast. So they're not expecting the storm to strengthen much more. Now, some of our models show that could still happen, but it's going to have to go on the right side of this track somewhere in here for that to occur. It's also possible the system comes down into here for a little bit and actually weakens down to a depression and dissipates somewhere in here. So we still have some possibilities. But for now, the Hurricane Center hitting Belize with a tropical storm, a moderate tropical storm, pretty close to intensity from what we saw back with, not Oscar, what was the one right before it? Nadine, which made landfall here a few weeks ago in the same exact place. So that's another thing to keep in mind. We had lots of rain from Nadine a few weeks ago. So some of these places have had flooding already. And this certainly is going to add to some of that misery here. So obviously not a good situation in Central America. But the Hurricane Center no longer allows the system to survive the Yucatan and has it a remnant low somewhere in here by the time we get to next Tuesday. So it would track across the Yucatan early in the week, probably Sunday night, Monday, and Monday night, then maybe come out into the Gulf sometime by Tuesday morning. We do have tropical storm warnings in effect for the majority of the northern coast of Honduras and a tropical storm watch just south across northeastern Nicaragua. And I think that will end up being dropped as this system is not going to be dropping in latitude any here, but you can see the forward motion slows down. So the storm is moving west at 10 miles per hour, but earlier in the day it was moving west at 15, and that was faster than what our models the other day were showing. So it's gotten farther west because of that. A couple of days ago, models were showing it moving very slowly at less than 5 miles per hour and kind of doing a loop back out to the right and then coming back. Well, the system is farther west than that, so that has changed the landscape of our forecast. Now, the ship's model does allow this system to strengthen enough into a hurricane. This may be too aggressive, but it's something I'll be watching for you. They are showing at least some chance, 30%, that this strengthens up to hurricane strength, 65 knots. It's at 35 right now. That's 75 miles per hour, 74 miles per hour. So there's a 1 in 3 chance that can still happen according to the ship's model, but we'll have to see because the ship's earlier was not doing very well with this. But if it does get that strong, you'll see, even though it comes out as a depression, they are re-strengthening this to a tropical storm as the waters down in here are still warm enough to support at least a lower end system, not a strong system at this point. And you can see the relative humidity is going to stay pretty high until we get this system farther north of, say, 25 north. So it's still in a favorable spot. The heat content is going to be pretty good. And the ocean water temperatures are warm enough to support a tropical system. We want them at about this level or higher. By the time we get down here, it's probably already moved into either Florida or merged with a front. and the wind shear stays low as well. So really the only challenge we're going to have is this time frame in here that it's going to spend over land. So if this system were to do what it looked like it was going to do a couple days ago and come up into here, it would barely have touched land and not have weakened. Even yesterday's forecast that I put out had it coming up into here, and that cut the time over land in half. Today, that time has doubled, and so as a result, I've had to make a change to my forecast. And you can see the change here in our ensemble guidance. This is pretty bad, and I'll take some blame. I'm happy to do that, but I also am showing you all what I am seeing. And if it makes sense to me, and at the time it did, I'm not going to forecast against it and say this is no big deal when it's showing a Cat 4, right? I mean, that's irresponsible. But fortunately for us here today, things have changed. And so now as a result, the majority of our guidance brings it up into here. Beyond that, we don't know because it may not even survive. But if you want to extrapolate it, this probably brings it up somewhere into this region in Florida. That's the mean of all the ensembles. And there could still be a shift west or east. The European says it could be farther west, even putting coastal Louisiana into play. But at that point, I would not be super worried about it because it's going to be a weak system, at the most a 40-mile-per-hour post-tropical system. The GFS ensemble has shifted north, but still targets Tampa on northward here, with only one solution showing this, maybe trying to get back to hurricane strength, but that's an outlier. But pretty much we're looking at the northern Gulf Coast of Florida, including the Panhandle, is where we're looking right now. The operational models, we do have several that bring it through that area, Tampa on northward. Again, it's going to be pretty weak. And we have several solutions that actually bring it into here and maybe even dissipate the system. And if it does get as far west here as the H-Wharf, it is probably getting picked up by a front and getting shot to the northeast, and maybe some fringe effects in here. So that's what we're looking at for the future track here. As far as the intensity goes, just about everything shows us as a tropical storm and no worse. We've got a couple of ensemble members and models that are a little bit stronger than that, but not for long. You'll see where the landfall would be in Belize at this point here. So we don't have anything worse than a Category 1, and more than likely we have a moderate tropical storm. And then we have quite a few models after that landfall that bring this down into the tropical depression zone. Now, the Hurricane Center says it does not make it back past this line right in here, but a lot of our ensembles and models do show that potential, if it gets back to the Gulf, it could start to strengthen again. At this point, though, it may not even be tropical anymore, so that's another thing to keep in mind. It may be getting its energy from the jet stream, which I'm going to show you here. So right now, the upper level pattern is very good for this system. Low winds aloft, upper level anticyclone, that's high pressure aloft, and that allows a storm like this to grow. That's why you see the big area of clouds. We do have a trough that's going to lift out and off the East Coast here. That's the one that's bringing the lousy weather to the Carolinas and Virginia today. High pressure builds back in north of the system this weekend. You see that very clearly here. But a big storm moving into Texas and the plains early next week is going to pick this system up and drive it northeastward. It's also going to increase our wind shear. But if the storm is in here and gets picked up, whatever's there is going to get picked up and moved to the northeast. The angle is going to be what we still have to harp on. Is it an angle of this direction or an angle in this direction? But either way, even if there's not much left, I would expect that moisture gets shunted and pulled to the northeast. And I would also expect that these faster winds in here can increase whatever's left and allow it to strengthen a little bit because of the jet stream energy. And that could be an issue in Florida with severe weather for Wednesday as you see this approaching trough. Is that severe weather coming from Sara, or is it coming from the front or low pressure that comes along the front and forms? And the answer is yes. I don't quite know. I wish I did, but this is a very complicated setup here. But one thing is for sure, this is going to move out very quickly. It's not going to linger quickly at all. It's not going to be a Helene. It's getting kicked out and across the region in less than a day. Here's a GFS model from this afternoon. You can see it has a tropical storm hugging the coastline of Honduras and weakening because of that land interaction. Some dry air gets into it. You'll see the landfall is going to be in Belize Sunday morning. And then not much left as it crosses the Yucatan. There's a weak low pressure area here, but it's not even really showing on the GFS. And then it pops back out here Tuesday night south of Pensacola as it's racing off to the north and east. And a lot of that is because we've got a strong front right in here, and it's going to basically merge or latch itself onto the front. You can see the moisture plume here is not very impressive, but the wind speeds are. And because we've got this massive high driving much colder air down here next Tuesday and Wednesday, and this big dry high in here, It's got itself a lane to very quickly get shot out either this way or this way. And I apologize if my red clashes here. But just something to keep in mind here, this system may still be autonomous as it comes into Florida on Wednesday, but it's moving very quickly. It'll be in and out in less than 12 hours for most of us here. And then look how much cooler and drier it gets at the end of the week. So those of you in Florida should be looking forward to that. Usually that strong front puts an end to tropical season. I say usually, nothing's really been usual this year, but that will be a great sign for us here. Here's our wind speeds on the GFS, and you will see here, aside from our coastal low that's going to form tonight and tomorrow east of the Carolinas, we don't have a lot of wind, but we do see wind gusts down here that are over 50 to 60 miles per hour. And then you'll see the secondary area of wind that forms here on Monday and Monday night north of the Yucatan. And some of that gets picked up and turned to the northeast towards the Tampa Bay area and just up the coast, with those strongest winds hitting early in the day on Wednesday and crossing the coast. So it's possible here we could see a little severe weather and some stronger winds over central Florida, and that could shift north or south a little bit depending on how this ends up moving through. But it's going to be a very quick process. And then the winds behind the system could be gusty as well, but they'll be out of the north and west. Here's a closer view of that for you all to see. And you'll see pretty tranquil weather across Florida here early next week with high pressure in control. Here comes our system, though. Winds are going to ramp up over the northeastern Gulf Tuesday night. And here we go Wednesday morning. We may see wind gusts approaching 40 miles per hour in the Tampa Bay region, if this is correct. They very quickly move across Orlando and point southward in the morning, and then to the Space Coast in the afternoon, and then it's already out of here by the evening. So this is not another Milton. This is racing, and it's a lot weaker. So there's good news there. Here's a look at the Europeans' wind gusts for you all to see here. You can see we may get some stronger gusts here north of Honduras, also off of the Carolina coast, where those winds will even be stronger due to the deeper pressure there. And Bermuda is going to have some strong wind as well this weekend. But you'll see here, after this system moves across the Yucatan, it's not very impressive. It's a tropical depression or weak tropical storm. In fact, the winds behind the front are actually stronger over the western Gulf of Mexico. I'll look at the tropical models real quick. Here's the HWRF. And you can see our system will strengthen very slowly here in the next day or two. It's not moving much. It's almost stalled here just north of the coast. But we'll see tropical storm conditions hitting the coast of Honduras all day tomorrow and likely all night tomorrow night and probably Saturday as well before the system begins to turn northwestward. Now, it does have an opportunity to strengthen a little bit as it approaches the coast of Belize Sunday afternoon and evening, but that'll be a small window for that to happen. As it crosses the Yucatan and comes out near Campeche, it's going to be quite a bit weaker here on Monday afternoon and Monday night. Now, it may have a chance to try to reorganize in the southern Gulf, but you can see the HWRF is not super impressed with those chances. The HAVS model is a little bit more aggressive, and it could be right. It's done better than the HWRF, but we'll see. I haven't trusted any model today. Let's just put it that way. I'm not pleased with what I'm seeing here because there's meteorology going on that the models are missing, in my opinion. But you can see here it doesn't really do a lot with our system. It keeps it a moderate tropical storm. It actually strengthens it a little bit as it approaches Belize, but not by much. This is not an impressive strengthening trend. It just struggles with dry air coming in and down the mountains. There's a lot of mountains in here, and anytime we have persistent flow coming down the mountains, that dries things out. That's downsloping. And those of you that live east of the Appalachians know what that's like. If you're in Charlotte, for example, and a big front brings snow into the mountains, it's not doing anything in Charlotte. Same deal here. But as this system moves across the Yucatan, it takes about a day to do so. And then as it comes out into the Gulf on Monday night, it's a lot weaker. But because of the approaching jet stream and because the water's still somewhat warm, the HAVS model does indicate that this system will get back to tropical storm intensity and may actually be at its strongest right in here. This is the Yucatan. Here's Scorpion Reef, and it's showing 56-mile-an-hour wind gusts. So the model stops here. I don't know what it'll show for Wednesday, but that's just something we need to keep an eye on at this point. Rain is going to be excessive here, 20 to maybe 30 inches of rain over the next 5 or 6 days, mainly confined to the northern coast of Honduras, but there are mountains in here as well. We'll see a lot of rain moving into Belize, over 6 inches. The Yucatan will get a few inches, and we need to watch out in El Salvador and eastern Guatemala and northwestern Nicaragua as well. This could be a catastrophic flood event. Maybe not as strong as Mitch was in 1998, but it will be up kind of in that same category as far as rain goes. And you can see with the GFS model here, over the next week or so, we have rain potential as high as 734 millimeters of rain. That's putting us up over 25 to 30 inches of rain, maybe in 35. So pretty incredible to see that kind of rain here. And that's what happens with a slow mover, though, unfortunately. But if it stays along the coast, that does fortunately keep the worst of that rain out of the mountainous areas where we would see even bigger orographic effects and mudslides and things like that. So still very bad. For Florida, we do have this moisture in place now, but here's where the rain is setting up for Wednesday, Tuesday night, Wednesday morning. You can see there could be some heavy rain out over the Gulf, locally a foot here, but that stays offshore. On the peninsula, again, we see this is the GFS, so we do see potential for 3 or 4 inches of rain. When you're on the northern Gulf Coast, assuming this stays south of you, we're probably seeing less than an inch. But if this shifts, we could see higher amounts in places like Panama City and Destin and Pensacola, maybe even Gulf Shore. So just something to keep in mind here. But we're looking at the most of that rain coming late Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, then it's out of here by Wednesday night. Ocean temperatures in the Gulf of Mexico are cut off for a tropical system to form is about 26°C. So that's right about here. So you can see it's warm enough down in here for a tropical system, but the real warm water is confined to this area where originally I thought our storm might try to go. But because it's going west of that, the waters have cooled some, so this is not going to have a lot of fuel to go with it as it tries to re-strengthen. Severe weather, we need to watch out for the jet stream as it moves in here on Wednesday ahead of our system. You can see pretty fast flow aloft here, 43, 45, maybe 50 mile per hour winds aloft. That could produce localized stronger winds. We may actually have what looks like a cold front with low pressure latching onto it. But you'll see there's a potential for lightning here, maybe some severe weather Tuesday evening around the central Gulf Coast, Tuesday night into western Florida, southern Georgia, and then Wednesday morning across the Florida Peninsula, and then it moves out by Wednesday night. There may be something left over Thursday across South Florida. So we're going to have to watch that. We're going to have to watch for that severe weather potential. Real quick, I want to show you what's going on in the Philippines. We already had one typhoon hit. It did weaken quickly as it hit, but it was still very strong. Now Taiwan is at risk here by Usagi, which will be a tropical storm, but still a rainmaker in a place that doesn't need any more rain. But take a look at Manny. This one is going to be another destructive storm for the Philippines, expected to be a violent typhoon by this weekend, and it should hit farther to the south. That hopefully will be it, but we'll have to see. Here's a quick look at Usagi, and you can see right over the southern tip of Taiwan. We have intense winds down there, intense rain falling, and we'll see things going downhill quickly across the southwestern part of Taiwan. Improvement across the Philippines, but here's where our track took it. It was a Category 4 and then weakened upon landfall, now down to Category 1, still a powerful system. And after it approaches Taiwan, it should fall apart as it moves back to the west-southwest. You can see that intensity forecast here with Usagi. Here's the next one. This is Manyi. I'm sorry, I can't keep up with all the names. And you can see it's starting to try to form an eye in here. It's getting that look of a system that will be strengthening significantly here, and more than likely a Category 1 typhoon pretty soon. That one's got some uncertainty, but again, likely heading for the northern Philippines. The area that got hit twice is here. You see the model average is just south of there. This will be really bad, unfortunately. And you can see the intensity forecast going up to Category 3 or even Category 4 here in the next 48 hours. Just a destructive system. And you can see on the GFS model that train here. There's one. Here's number 2. We hopefully are going to see quieter weather beyond that, but we'll have to see. At this point, it doesn't look like anything would threaten. So if you think it's been bad in Florida, talk to the folks in the Philippines and China and in Taiwan. They've had storm after storm after storm after storm, which this is the time of year that does happen out there, unfortunately. All right, so we're done with the tropics for now. I'll talk more about it tomorrow. Here's a look at the United States, and here is our storm system heading southeast. Where I'm in Raleigh, it's rainy and we need it, but it's chilly, and that feels great to me personally. But just an ugly day here across the eastern U.S., and it'll stay ugly into tomorrow. But we're going to see much warmer, drier, beautiful weather across this region until we get later into the weekend when our next storm moves into the area. Here we go on the GFS. You can see that our storm will move out and offshore here by tomorrow night. The next one moves into the western United States. If you're in Atlantic Canada, you're going to have some ugly weather as well with some wet weather and some gusty winds for a couple of days. But here comes our next system, and it'll start getting unsettled in the southwest Sunday night. Another big system for the northwest, by the way. with chilly conditions, heavy rain at the coast, snow in the mountains. Those two don't form and phase, but they do stay separate. And you can see that cold air bottling up in the northwest. Next week, a lot colder, starting in the northwest, but eventually ending up in the east. But we could have a very intense storm here moving up through Minnesota and Wisconsin by Tuesday. Expect some severe weather out ahead of it across the plains early next week. Behind that, we could get lashed with some backlash snow, some cold weather, and really strong winds Wednesday into Thursday. So I don't think we'll have a hurricane hitting Florida anymore, but we may have a tropical system hitting Florida with severe weather. We may have a blizzard here in parts of the upper Midwest, and we've got this assault of much colder air for the first time this season, all at the same time on the 20th of November. It'll stay chilly across much of the weekend in much of the eastern U.S. and the northern United States before a brief warm-up on Thanksgiving week. And then the cold air is still around in this region, so we have to watch for some wintry trouble on Thanksgiving in this area. It will warm up across the southeast, and the west will certainly be warmer, but we've got this battleground here where the cold air hasn't completely left just yet. So stay tuned on that if you are traveling. Do know that we do have a marginal risk of severe weather on the coast here for tonight. There may be a couple tornadoes, although it's not a great chance. Our next real shot at severe weather starts Sunday evening in parts of West Texas here. But I think Monday's the day we need to be more concerned with severe weather, including a few tornadoes across this region. So that's a look at what we've got here. You can see the temperature forecast again real quick. Look how quickly things are going to warm up next week, and then look how quickly it cools down. Big blast of cold in a week before Thanksgiving here on Wednesday and Thursday. It stays chilly next weekend. We still have some cool air lingering, but it is going to warm up for Thanksgiving, and I think a mild day in the southwest again. Still chilly on the East Coast, but not too bad. And here comes the next wave of cold coming in at the end of the month. So hope everybody has a wonderful Thursday. As always, I thank you for watching and trusting me. Please share with your friends, especially those of you that have family in Central America, in the Yucatan, and of course in Florida. You still need to keep an eye on it. You always need to keep an eye on things in Florida until it's the official end of the season, and we still have 16 days for that to happen. But I appreciate everybody's time, and I want to give all the thanks, all the honor and glory to my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. God has been good. Has God not been good to you? I know he's been good to me. Trust me, we go through all kinds of stuff, but we're still here, and every day is a blessing. Paul tells the church of Rome, Romans 8:28, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. And before I loved God, I just thought everything was evil. I thought I had no hope. And that's a terrible spot to be in when you have no hope, not knowing what's next, feeling depressed, feeling lonely, feeling just a lack of complete trust and a lack of care for other people. And thank goodness there was a point in my life where enough was enough. Some people got into my life that lifted me up, and that hadn't really happened. I'd been around people that were kind of negative to me, to be honest. And I don't fault those people. I love those people just as much as God loves them, but they weren't getting me to the places I wanted to be. So I spent time learning more about why those folks were happy. I spent time in prayer. I spent time learning about God's creation. And over time, it has allowed me to grow as a Christian. And that was just the beginning. Becoming a Christian is just the beginning of a lifelong journey that ends with eternal life. And that is the good news I wanted to share with you today, that you too can accept Christ and you can live eternally and have the hope that the time on earth here is going to be limited, but eternity is eternity. It is forever. And that is the goodness of God. So I wanted to share that good news with you today because that's what excites me. The weather is exciting at times, but the weather is going to come and go. God is here forever. Hope you all have a wonderful night, and we'll see you soon tomorrow. Take care.